Welcome to the web show on AmericanSportsNet.com. I'm Matt Lincoln. It's Super Bowl week, which means it's time to unveil the top 10 in our Super Bowl 50. As the NFL celebrates the 50th anniversary of the Super Bowl, we have been counting down the 50 best NFL players from the American Sports Network conferences. We started with a list of 100 nominees and took that list to experts, former players, agents, and media to narrow the list down to 50. Then we decided to let you, the fans, decide the order through an online vote. You can watch our videos unveiling numbers 50 through 11, but for a quick reminder, here they are. Let's start with numbers 50 through 46. Leonard Smith, defensive back from McNeese State. Remember Tramon Williams, he won a Super Bowl for the Packers, comes in at number 46. 45 through 41, one of the first best offensive linemen of all time. Fuzzy Thurston played for those early Packer teams. Mark Kelso played for 4 losing Super Bowl teams for the Buffalo Bills. Top 40 starts like this. Jermon Bushrod won a Super Bowl with the Saints. Brian Westbrook, one of the best scat backs of all time, longtime running back for the Eagles. Numbers 35 through 31 look like this. Gary Fensick, he was in the Super Bowl shuffle as one of the best players for the Bears. Sean Payton was the head coach of the Saints when they won their Super Bowl. Top 30 looks like this. Ryan Allen has the longest punt in Super Bowl history for the Patriots, and Steve Christie kicked for those Bills teams as well. Top 25. Terrell Owens, one of the best receivers of all time, maybe the third best receiver of all time, checks in at number 23. Charles Haley and his 5 Super Bowl rings comes in at number 22. Top 20 looks like this. Howie Long is a Hall of Famer right there, and he went to Villanova. Of course, Antonio Brown, if he keeps playing like he's playing now, will be a Hall of Famer one day. 15 through 11, Troy Brown, longtime great receiver for the New England Patriots. And when you think about punting, you think of one man, Ray Guy. He comes in at number 14. The top 10 starts right now. Randy Moss. If T.O. was the third best receiver of all time, Randy Moss might be the second best receiver of all time. 7-time Pro Bowler, lost 2 Super Bowls, numbers 42 and 47. Some crazy numbers. Third all-time receiving yards, second in TDs. Only 5 wide receivers have over 100, and he has 156. He went to Marshall, and so did number 9 on our list, Ahmad Bradshaw. 2 times he led the Super Bowl winning team in rushing in 42 and 46 as a running back for the Giants. Also scored the game-winning touchdown in Super Bowl 46. He has 48 all-time touchdowns. Number 8 from Kent State, Jack Lambert, 9-time Pro Bowler, 7-time first-team All-Pro, one of the best linebackers of all time. One of the members of that Steeler defense that helped win Super Bowls 9, 10, 13, 14. He's in the Steelers Hall of Fame. His number's unofficially retired by the Steelers, and he was inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame in 1990. Number 7, Tennessee State's Richard Dent. 4-time Pro Bowler, 4-time All-Pro, 2-time Super Bowl champion, and he was a Super Bowl 22 MVP, inducted into the Hall of Fame in 2011. Over 137 sacks in his career. Number 6, Ben Roethlisberger, 2-time Super Bowl champion, numbers 40 and 43 out of Miami of Ohio. The Steelers quarterback is the youngest starting quarterback to win a Super Bowl, 23 years old. He was the NFL Offensive Rookie of the Year, 14th all-time in passing yards and passing touchdowns already, and he shows no signs of slowing down. Number 5, from Morehead State, Phil Simms. 2-time Super Bowl champion, 21, 25, didn't play in 25, but was the Super Bowl MVP in Super Bowl 21. Not in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, but when you think of some of the best quarterbacks of all time, you think of what Phil Simms did for the Giants. Number 4, Mean Joe Green from North Texas, the only guy on this list whose alma mater basically changed their mascot to his nickname. Yes, the Mean Green of North Texas are that way because of Mean Joe Green. He helped win Super Bowls 9, 10, 13, and 14 for the Steelers. 10-time Pro Bowler. He's a Walter Payton Man of the Year, and of course, he is in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Number 3, the man the trophy is named after. Vince Lombardi is a graduate from Fordham. He coached the Green Bay Packers from 1959 to 1967. A 6-time NFL champion, 5 of them as head coach, 1961, 1962, 1965, 1966, 1967. When you think of the best coaches of all time, the conversation starts with Vince Lombardi. Number 2, Brett Favre. Of course, what a fantastic career Brett Favre has had, one of the best quarterbacks of all time, and he pops up in number 2 on our list. The Southern Mississippi grad, 20 years in the NFL. No one plays for 20 years in the NFL. Packers retired is number 4. He's going to be in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. You might as well just start making that bust right now. Longtime member of the Green Bay Packers from 1992 to 2007. Won Super Bowl 31, lost next year in Super Bowl 32. 11-time Pro Bowler, 3-time NFL MVP, and the numbers look like this. Number 2 all-time in passing yards, number 2 all-time in passing touchdowns, and number 1 all-time in completions. And that brings us to number 1. Who can beat Brett Favre? He's one of the best quarterbacks of all time. Well, as voted by you, our fans, here he is, number 1 on the list. Terry Bradshaw from Louisiana Tech, 4-time Super Bowl champion. You know the ones by now because he played with Mean Joe Green. He played with Jack Lambert, numbers 9, 10, 13, 14. A 2-time Super Bowl MVP in 13 and 14. The 1978 NFL MVP. Not only is he in the Steelers Hall of Fame, not only is he in the NFL Pro Football Hall of Fame, he's also in the College Football Hall of Fame. You know, his overall numbers might not look great. He's got 212 touchdowns and 210 interceptions. But when it mattered the most, no one was better than Terry Bradshaw. He only passed for 300 yards in a game 7 times in his career, but 3 times was in the postseason. And when the Steelers needed him to make big plays in Super Bowls, that's exactly what he did. So there it is. That's the list, the final 10 in our Super Bowl 50. To help break down the whole list, we're joined, as we always are, by Russ Baxter from ProFootballGuru.com, who's getting ready for the Super Bowl in Northern California. Russ, I hope you're comfortable. I know you just got into town. Are you looking forward to the big game?
Oh, how can you not? It's the golden anniversary. Super Bowl 50. You know, we kind of have the young, Carolina Panthers, the more veteran Denver Broncos, that high-scoring offense against the number 1 defense, that irresistible force, immovable object type of game, and it should be fun. I mean, 11 of the last 18 Super Bowls have been decided by 7 points. They have gotten much more competitive. Now, I know we had the blowout 2 years ago with Denver and Seattle, but, it's a far cry from the old days of the Super Bowl where, 7 of the first 31 were decided by 7 points or less. The game has kind of lived up to its billing as of late.
Well, some of the stars of some of those old Super Bowls did show up in our top 10. What sticks out to you? I know one of the big things is we have 3 stars from the 4-time Super Bowl winning Steelers.
Yeah, and all from different directions in terms of, you got 1 first overall pick in Terry Bradshaw. You got Mean Joe Green, who was really the start of the foundation of the 70s Pittsburgh Steelers, the 4th overall pick in 1969, Chuck Noll's first pick. And then, of course, Jack Lambert, intensity, 2nd-round pick out of Kent State. You think about the contributions he made. I was just writing about some of the great defensive performances in Super Bowl history against the Rams in Super Bowl 14, where the Steelers were kind of on the ropes that day. He had 14 tackles and a game-saving interception. Vince Ferragamo threw the ball down the middle. Jack Lambert was way downfield dropping back. He was such a rangy linebacker. So, we talk about how hard it is to repeat as a Super Bowl champion. Those Steeler teams did it twice in the 70s, 9 and 10 and 13 and 14.
A star-studded list in the top 10. Lots of guys here who could make an argument for number 1. But does Terry Bradshaw belong at the top of this list?
Yeah, you could certainly make a case for Joe Green. You could certainly make a case for Vince Lombardi. I mean, after all, here's the guy who the Lombardi Trophy is named after. And Super Bowl era aside, he's the architect of 5 championships with the Green Bay Packers. He lost that 1 playoff championship game in 1960 to the Philadelphia Eagles, and that was it. He was 9-1 in the postseason. Obviously, he was a college football star at Fordham, and the contributions he made as a head coach. And I think what people forget is, even when he was done with the Packers, he coached 1 more year. He went to the Washington Redskins, who were kind of down on their luck, and he elevated their program as well before he he passed away so soon in life. But again, you could make a case for a lot of these guys being the first overall pick. I mean, it's a list full of, you got Super Bowl MVP. I mean, Terry Bradshaw is the two-time Super Bowl MVP. Richard Dent was the MVP of Super Bowl 20. Phil Simms was the MVP of Super Bowl 21. He completed 22 of 25 passes that day against the Denver Broncos, 88%. How do you do much better than that? Everybody on this list has got at least one ring, except Randy Moss. And I did the math, and I count Phil with getting 2 rings. He obviously didn't play in Super Bowl 25. He got hurt, and Jeff Hostetler came in late in the season. 22 Super Bowl championships in this top 10.
And 2 of those Super Bowls are to Ahmad Bradshaw. The people who come to visit AmericanSportsNet.com voted for the order of this top 10, and they voted Ahmad Bradshaw number 9. Maybe his somehow fan group got a hold of this link and really pumped in some votes for Ahmad Bradshaw. Let me throw out some names for you and tell me whether you think they should be in the top 10 over the Giants running back. Would you put Charles Haley in the list? Would you put T.O. on that list? Would you put Howie Long in this top 10?
Did you say Howie Long at the end there?
Yes.
I would put all 3 of them above Ahmad Bradshaw, without question. Because longevity has to be part of this as well. Charles Haley's part of 5 Super Bowl teams. Howie Long, distinguished career, Pro Football Hall of Famer, as is Charles Haley. And Terrell Owens, obviously a lot of controversy surrounded him, but his numbers are off the charts. And he did it with a lot of different teams. That's not to knock out Ahmad Bradshaw. Listen, to make this list at all, I think is significant when you think of the thousands and thousands of players that have played from these schools. So, I mean, so what if you're 13 or 14? It's like ranking Super Bowl champions. I've done pieces on those. The bottom line is only 49 make the list. So, it's not a bad thing. It's like the Hall of Fame list. What's the greatest Hall of Fame list? What's the worst? Answer, there is no worst Hall of Fame list.
Right. Bradshaw aside, there is another active player in the middle of this list at number 6, Ben Roethlisberger. It's interesting, with who knows how many more years he has left in his career, to see where he fits in history, and it's right there in the middle of some of the best players of all time. Where do you think Ben Roethlisberger could finish when he's done?
Well, the thing that's been amazing about Ben is now watching him as a complete quarterback. He always was a guy who was able to move. He shuffled with his feet. He's always had the big arm. Early in his career, the Steelers are very conservative with him, but now he is the backbone of the offense. And his ability to throw the ball downfield and what they do with those. Now, listen, when you talk about passing attacks in the Pittsburgh Steelers, you think of Lynn Swann and John Stallworth and so on. But you could make a great case for Antonio Brown as being, if he's not better than those 2 guys, he certainly has inched his way into the conversation. At times, he's absolutely uncoverable. And the rapport between him and Ben, who has taken 3 teams to the Super Bowl, he's won a pair of championships. He didn't play that well against Seattle in Super Bowl 40, but do they win it without him and Santonio Holmes in Super Bowl 43? It's been fun watching Ben evolve as a passer. Okay? I mean, at times, the Steelers look like the most dangerous offense in the entire league. Unfortunately for Ben, he had trouble staying on the field this year, but he pulled up, he got off the mat a couple of times, most notably in the playoff game against Cincinnati. The thing is, and since we're talking about Super Bowl week, he was the one quarterback, if you really think about it, that gave the Denver Broncos more problems than any other quarterback in the league this year.
He has had a great career, and he's still going strong. Russ Baxter from ProFootballGuru.com. Enjoy the big game this weekend, and thank you so much for your help on the Super Bowl 50.
You got it.
And now we're joined here in the studio with another Super Bowl expert, John Saraceno. He's covered 20 Super Bowls for the USA Today. He's been covering football for over 30 years. John, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
I want to break down really the top 2 guys on this list. Terry Bradshaw, Brett Favre, 2 of the best quarterbacks of all time, no doubt, but played in different eras. How do we compare them?
Well, you know what? When you're comparing players from different eras, it's best to compare them against the players of that era. Because as we all know, players have gotten bigger, stronger, faster. So Bronco Nagurski was a great running back, but what would he rank against Jim Brown, and how would he rank against Walter Payton or LaDainian Tomlinson? So both of those players, Terry Bradshaw and Brett Favre, dominated their competition when they were playing. So they are elite level players. In the case of Terry Bradshaw, he is in the Hall of Fame, and Brett Favre's headed there.
Certainly. First ballot, we'd be shocked if he is not there come next year. And both characters, guys who in some ways are larger in life now, or larger than life than when they were playing.
Definitely. I mean, look at Terry Bradshaw, who came out of Louisiana Tech and really struggled with the Steelers early on. And he had that good old boy, aw shucks kind of persona. And people made fun of him. Remember in that Super Bowl 13, Thomas Hollywood Henderson from the Cowboys said, you know, Bradshaw's so dumb he couldn't spell cat if you spotted him the C and the A. So he always had that cloud that covered him. And we know what's happened to Terry post-football. He's become one of the biggest stars on TV, and he has his own brand, his own aura. And likewise, Brett Favre, who was traded early from Atlanta to Green Bay, had to find his way. Went to Southern Mississippi, you know, was a good college player, like Bradshaw was. Not probably a great college player, but you know, the Packers, in trading for him, they saw something in him, and namely that was his rocket arm. Brett could throw the ball through a brick wall. But he also developed his own personality over time. And honestly, he's been my favorite player over the years, because it was like watching a boy in his backyard playing football. He was so full of exuberance and excitement. And that's what we remember as kids, playing sports. And, you know, football's about entertainment too. And Bradshaw and Favre both gave their fans their money's worth.
Well, I think that's what's just interesting about these two guys. They both have the championships. They both have generally the numbers. But it's really a lot more of the intangibles that made these two guys great. Bradshaw with his ability to play at his best in big games, and Favre with just that toughness.
Yeah, I mean, Bradshaw, one of 3 quarterbacks to have 4 Super Bowl rings, along with Joe Montana and Tom Brady. You know, he proved his mettle in big games. But Terry was also a team player. You know, the Steelers were loaded with stars on both sides of the football, whether you're talking Joe Green, Jack Lambert, Jack Ham, Mel Blount on the defense, or you're talking Rocky Bleier, Franco Harris, Lynn Swann, John Stallworth on offense. So he knew he had to be the general of that team. And everybody looked up to Terry Bradshaw. Brett Favre also, the intangible qualities, but one tangible quality he had was leadership. They followed Brett Favre. The Packers, that was their guy. And while he was not a perfect player on the field, there are no perfect players. Brett made a lot of bad throws, threw a lot of interceptions in his career, but he had the will to win. And I think players pick up on that, and they'll follow you through the gates of hell.
You've been covering him for a long time. What's your best number 4 story?
Well, I really wouldn't be able to tell it. but Brett, I mean, Brett is a character. The one thing I would say about Brett Favre that people probably don't realize, maybe because he's from the Kill, Mississippi, and when they hear him speak, they hear the Southern drawl. Brett's a lot smarter than he sounds. He's a very clever guy. He made his share of mistakes. I think he's learned from a lot of them. But I would say that's the most surprising thing about Brett Favre, is that he was just the kind of player and person that people underestimated. I think because of where he came from. He didn't come from a huge college program, and he wasn't this all-American coming out of college. And I think that served him well. He flew under the radar early and then blew up big.
Well, I think what's interesting, too, about his career is that most of his greatness was with Green Bay, and living through that when he left the Packers, there might have been a feeling this is a little bit of a Montana situation. This is a little bit of a, what are you doing, Brett? But he really did reinvent himself and have great years after he left Green Bay. Maybe not reinvent himself, but just continued his greatness.
I got to tell you something, Matt. His last year in Minnesota, I covered the NFC title game against New Orleans. I've never seen a player that age perform at such a high level and get the living daylights beat out of him. I don't know if you've ever seen photos on the internet. His hip, it's purple, as in the color of the Vikings helmets, all along his side. So Brett was he was borderline contender for MVP at like 42. That's unheard of among quarterbacks, or really any position, virtually in sports, period. So he continued to perform at a high level for a very long time, and that's why he was my favorite player to watch and cover. And he also would speak his mind. You wouldn't get a sugar-frosted answer from Brett. He would tell you what he was thinking, and if you're a sports writer, that's what you want.
Yeah. Kind of a broad picture here. These guys are on this list because of the colleges that they went to. In our top 10, we've had 4 of the best quarterbacks of all time when you had these 2 with Phil Simms and Ben Roethlisberger. What does it say to us about the NFL that, the best quarterbacks aren't usually the best college quarterbacks going to the best college programs?
No, we've seen that time and time again, Matt. With the college game, there are various systems that quarterbacks perform very well in. But outside of that system, such as David Klingler with the University of Houston, Akili Smith at Oregon, they didn't fare so well in the NFL because they weren't in a pro-style passing attack. Now, the game continues to change, but Phil Simms, Morehead State, was a decent little college player, but he didn't even complete 50% of his passes in college.
Wow.
And threw more interceptions and touchdowns. However, once Bill Walsh got a hold of him, even though he never played for the Hall of Fame 49ers coach, he told him, look, don't try to throw a fastball every time. You got to lay it in there. Your receivers won't drop it, and also when you're throwing hard, sometimes your accuracy. Well, he took that lesson to heart, and Phil, to this day, teaches quarterbacks about mechanics. So he made the transition from a small school. Nobody ever thought Phil Simms was going to be an NFL quarterback.
Wow.
And you could cite many examples like that. There's a lot of fine quarterbacks that have come out of smaller college programs and done very well.
And just look at this year, you're talking about Paxton Lynch from Memphis, North Dakota State's quarterback. We're talking about being the top guys picked in the draft, so it's something that doesn't end. John Saraceno, he's been covering the NFL for a long time with some great insight about our Super Bowl 50. Thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome.
And thank you so much for joining us on these web videos. The web show will continue going on for the next few weeks. Make sure you come right back here to AmericanSportsNet.com on Saturday as we will break down our all Super Bowl team. Yes, that's right, from every position, the rankings as voted on by you. Thank you so much for watching.